Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Dave.
And we're the hosts of the Chasing Tomorrow podcast, where we bring you stories that delve into the science and spirit behind intriguing people doing extraordinary things.
Today on Chasing Tomorrow podcast, episode 7, we are super pleased to have Boomer here joining us. Now, Boomer is a SEAL Fit coach and a burpee master. I'm super excited to talk to a guy who can, in fact, do 4,700. I didn't say that wrong. 4,700 burpees in one day. The mental fortitude to get through something like that is huge. Bringing Boomer into the conversation as well too, at a time like this during COVID-19 and quarantine, with mental health and people really leaning on professionals that really know how to get human beings to endure and to cope at a time like this is huge. So I'm super excited to bring Boomer into the conversation as an unbeatable mind coach. Welcome, Boomer. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. This is awesome. What a great experience. I met Joe a couple of years ago at a 29029 event, and I couldn't be more happy to see what you guys are putting together, getting individuals that are kind of living the uncommon life and giving them a platform to share stories and hopefully, help others out.
No, absolutely. No, this is fantastic. And so, hey, do you mind if we start off with the 4,700 burpees in a day? So, myself, I'm an ultra marathoner. I run for days on end. Joe as well too, and Joe, I think Joe, you're running 10 miles a day for how many days now in a row?
210 I'm up to now.
210, but both of us in conversations before this conversation, we were talking about burpees because I hate them. And I don't know any one person who likes them. And Joe told me that you like them. You like them enough that you did 4,700 in a day. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So originally, it was from a 100,000 burpees in 2018, and that was to support vets with post-traumatic stress. And so in SEAL Fit and Unbeatable Mind, they're kind of sister companies. We're looking to do 22 million burpees as a community. And that signified the 22 vets that commit suicide a day from PTS. And so basically that was our mission, 100,000 burpees. Why? In 2018 in May, I got injured. My elbow got a little cranky and I really couldn't even do a push-up. So I had to put some of my burpees off. Now, 100,000 burpees a day averages about 275 a day. So 100,000 burpees in a year, 275 in a day. So once you start falling behind, Joe, if your miles started falling behind, and you got to have a big day.
Yeah.
So July, I sat down, and the end of June, I said, I have to have a big day here. And I said, why not? My 47th birthday is coming up. I'm going to do something big. We call it a BHAG, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal. And you take that number, 47, 4,700, and I put it out on Facebook and Instagram, and I leveraged the heck out of it. Let everybody know what I was doing. So there was no turning back. And so, part of that was reframing. I don't hate burpees anymore. I love burpees, right? And just that positive reframing. It's the same thing as coaches. We hear somebody say, oh, running sucks. I hate running. I'm so slow, blah, blah, blah. You have to have them massage that into something they can use instead of pollute their mind. So I just turned it into, I love burpees. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to do one at a time. And I just said, I need to be where my feet are for 24 hours until they're done. And once I decided that was what I had to do, then I was all in. And that day, my CrossFit Charlotte in North Carolina supported me. They put burpees on the menu for their workout of the day. So 100 burpees was in the workout. So everyone did them with me. At the end, I get chills. I got choked up. Like people were doing 1,000 burpees with me. I mean, it was amazing. And at the end, it started at midnight and I finished like at 9:30 at night. And I was crying at the end. I was emotional. I couldn't believe I did it. And I'm sure you guys experience this where you say, holy cow, look what I did. When you look back at that whole day, and sometimes you wonder, can I do it? And then you go, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm 2,000 burpees in, and I'm not going to turn around and go, oh, sorry guys, I couldn't make it. So, the next day, being the ultra competitive person that we all are, I guess, I said, why didn't I just do 300 more? When's the next time I'm going to do 5,000 burpees? And I'm like, well, that would have taken me another 4 hours. There's no doubt. But It was the support of the people, and it was the cause. And Dave, you talk about it all the time about getting behind a cause and making it worthwhile, and doing it for others, because we can. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We have the ability to, so why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's just dig just a little bit more into that day, because it's sort of interesting when we think about, yeah, I agree. Once we sort of commit to the goal, we try not to let anything get in the way. But it's sort of fun to understand a little bit, like, did you do a lot more in the first few hours? Did it decline over time? How did you eat? What did you do? Like, what was, were there moments where it was really hard and then it got easier again? Or was it just always hard? Like, tell us a little more.
Yeah, so one thing I love doing is working out. As you can see, I'm in my backyard, and I love doing my Zoom calls if the weather holds up. Hopefully it does. Love doing stuff outside. So I'm like, I'm going to do these outside. Well, my birthday is on July 2nd. I live in North Carolina. So at midnight, it was great. Cranking them out, just doing, we'll do, I don't know, 100 in an hour. Is that about right? I think I did 10 a minute now I can't even remember how I broke it down, but it was very slow and steady at the beginning. I knew it was gonna be a long day.
Yeah.
But once the sun came up and it started cranking up, somebody put an easy up tent over me, so that cooled me off, but it's still 95 degrees. And so that started weighing on me. As far as food goes, I was trying to eat really fruit, things I knew I could digest that wouldn't, slow me down. Pickle juice was huge. I don't know if you guys use pickle juice, but I was going through pickle juice. Yeah, I was going through some pickle juice just to help my sodium, a lot of water. Probably not eating a lot. I think at the end of the day, I lost something like 7 pounds that day. And if you saw the picture of me holding a sign that says 4,700 burpees, I look depleted, and I'm definitely, they tried to feed me pizza at the end. I couldn't even, I'm like, no, that's not happening. But so during the day, it was a slow and steady, just understanding, just keep on checking that box. I tried to take an ice bath. We do a lot of ice baths in Seal Fit and Unbeatable Mind. And I'm thinking this would be a great recovery. Man, I seized up. I tried to go back out and do, and I was in it for maybe 5 or 6, 10 minutes maybe. And I got out and I tried to do burpees and my hips just seized up. And so I had to work. I'm like, goodness gracious, now I got to work through this as well. So there's no doubt I should have done a lot more research on my fueling. You guys, I'm sure, are dialed into the fueling piece. I'm probably terrible at it, but I just kind of gutted it through. Like I said, that whole day just seemed like just get them done. Take the rest when you need it, and it was really slow at the end.
Yeah, the way I look at a burpee as well too is you have to make a conscious effort of getting down and doing it and then coming back up. The way I would kind of see burpees when it comes to like an ultra endurance burpee contest, that's ultimately really what you did, is there would be a lot of decisions along the way that you maybe have some negative mental talk, or not wanting to do another one, or giving yourself a limit, or even 3 hours in thinking, if I'm feeling this terrible 3 hours in, how on earth am I going to do this for this many more hours? What were some of the mental nuggets that you would end up giving our audience of how you end up getting through things at the 3 hour mark, at the 6 hour mark, at the 9 hour mark? Any one, or two little specific little pieces that you remember that really got you over the edge?
Yeah, there was a couple. Like, first of all, a lot of people came by to visit me that I hadn't seen in a long time, and that was awesome. And doing this maybe a solo mission, but there's so many people that helped. People that, man, I just hadn't seen. They just came by just to see how I was doing and maybe did 10 with me, and that fired me up for the rest of the time. But there's a great little trick you can do. 10 down to 1, I play, so it's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, that's 55. So if you can do, you kind of play with numbers a little bit just to keep your mind active. You get down, you're like, all right, 5 more, and I'm okay. Rest, 4 more. Let's just do it and get back into that cycle. So playing those games. Sometimes I like to say we're not athletes, we're mathletes, because sometimes you can trick yourself into, I'm sure you guys do it with micro goals, right? You're like, let's just get to this next thing and then we can take a drink. And that's how it was burpees. Let's just get to this next number and see if that works. So I play with that. And, Dave, I heard it with you, and laughter. I laughed a lot.
Right.
That
Right.
gets me through, just like, what the hell am I doing out here? This is ridiculous. And just like laughing and saying,
Mhm.
this is just so stupid. It's awesome. And so that has a lot to do with my mental state. It keeps me fresh. I think finding humor in strange things that happen. And I think I cursed myself because it's starting to rain.
Oh, well, we'll hope that it doesn't fry you there. So, but it's, it's a story that we love because, you know, there isn't sort of as much a finish line as there is a commitment. There is a physical and a mental element to it. It's sort of a microcosm of life. You get to test out and play out, how will I respond under difficult circumstances? Those could have been, something with work, family, life. And the more we're practiced at it, seemingly the better we'll have, the totality of life. So you take that experience and you play that into not just how Boomer lives, but then your coaching. Tell us a little bit about what it means to be an Unbeatable Mind coach, and then we'll dig in a little bit from there.
Yeah. So in 2013, I stumbled upon Unbeatable Mind. It was, something about mindset. I was teaching my clients at CrossFit how to become better competitors. So I read the book called Mind Gym, which is a great book, and just really, it's almost the basis of every time I talk to a coach, they're like, oh yeah, Mind Gym. Yeah. And so it gave me a really great base about looking into how to be mentally tough. And then Unbeatable Mind came into my life, and it really talked about, we say the big four of mental toughness. And it's composed of breathing, positivity, visualization, and goal setting. And once you control one, you can control the other. And so once you start actually learning how to breathe through your nostrils, controlled, slow, you can actually start feeding your brain positivity. And it's amazing, just those two things together, and you start witnessing your thoughts, witnessing your actions. It really gives this space between your thoughts and your actions. And how many times would you like that, Joe, in your life? How many times do you like to have a space between your thoughts and your actions?
Yeah, no, it's good. And so, yeah, this breathing thing, I say that in a joking way, we do it unconsciously, right? And so that's how we live. But, I hang out with a bunch of you guys who have been SEAL Fit stuff, and, breathing almost always comes up as the first topic, but not, slow breathing or fast breathing, actually techniques in breathing. But they trigger way more than we would understand how we feel and think, right? Isn't that true, Boomer?
Yeah, that's true. Have you guys ever done any box breathing before? Yeah. So that's really a technique that we use to kind of get ourselves centered. Like when we do if we were to do a session here and I was your coach, we would actually box breathe for a minute or two just to get centered. It's a great way to put like a pin in your day. So if you're coming from the gym and you're going back to work, maybe you want to breathe before you go back to work. So basically the idea is always breathing through your nostrils. You're going to breathe in, let's say for 5 seconds. You're going to hold for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds. And all within that 20 seconds, you're breathing through your nose, really getting your diaphragm built in, expanding your lungs, feeding your body full of oxygen. When you hold the breath, you're actually teaching your body that you're in control, and you're actually exercising your fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. So it's good. It's 5 seconds. You're just telling yourself, I got this. There's no problem. And so that really helps when things get tough. You can start breathing and saying, it's okay. I know everything's going crazy. We just had an accident. I just got bumped into whatever. I'm going to breathe a little bit and bring the situation down and control my thoughts. And it's a great line. They don't call them first reactors. They call them first responders. And that's how we want to be. We want to respond instead of react.
Yeah. One more point on this. So we might tell people you should meditate, and meditation is a great skill to learn, but sometimes it's a bigger, longer pathway to get the benefits because there's some real both internal and behavioral changes. But the breathing, anyone I've met, the first time you do that box, you actually feel it instantly. It's not like meditation, which might take me a week of practice. Because it has such a physical impact on you but it just clear, like it is one of the ways to completely reset. And I think that it's an art that more should try, and you don't need much to do it.
You could actually do it, we do it with our eyes closed, and then, so it becomes a form of meditation, actually visualization. You can see either that box being drawn, or you could visualize the numbers. We have a Unbeatable Mind box breathing app, that's at the App Store, and you can actually have audio cues as you allow your visualization to go. So there's definitely ways to tie in other mental games with it, so it can become meditative visualization. But like you said, you don't need much. You could do it with your eyes open. If you were in traffic, if we ever have traffic again, you could use it. Or waiting in line. If you're at the bank and you're waiting in line, if that ever happens again, you can box breathe. Or even if you remove those holes and now you're just breathing through your nostrils in and out slowly, is a great way to just go, all right, I'm controlling my breath. I'm fueling it just like we want to fuel for an endurance event. And not only that, once you have that control, you can start controlling your positive thoughts. So you can start feeding into that mindset. One other trick you can do if you have trouble sleeping, if you take your inhale, let's say it's 4, you take your exhale to 8, that actually will calm you down. So you can play with those ratios a little bit, and you can control, you can get yourself pumped up, or you can actually bring yourself down.
No, I couldn't agree more, Boomer. I think that myself personally in the ultramarathoning sphere and world, your mind only knows 2 things: the pictures you draw for it and the words that you tell it. And at any one time, you could end up, taking the ultimate tool that we have, which is our breath. I know all of our listeners right now are paying attention to their breath, but often, you won't be, I guarantee you, we're all breathing, but we don't notice that we're breathing. So we can end up drawing attention to that. And those negative thoughts, those fears, those concerns of the past, of the future, all of that gets eliminated with drawing attention to the breath in the moment, and you make it whatever it is. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be 7,000 burpees into a week, or you need to be 200 kilometers into a long bike ride. You could do it when you're having some negative thoughts, when you're in the grocery store and there's somebody who's annoying you next to you. It's like, okay, this isn't useful. Take a deep breath. And so, yeah, no, I completely agree, Boomer. Do you take your breath within your coaching and your athletic background, and then do you take that into your regular everyday life?
Yeah, so the great thing about mental toughness is you want to practice it, just like you said, every day. We have this, it's really funny, we have this faucet that when you turn it on, then you have to touch it to turn on. It's the craziest thing, right? And when we moved into our house, we thought it was the coolest thing, and now my girlfriend sits there and slaps it, and she's like, I can't get this thing to work. And that's mental toughness. Like, figuring out how to get that faucet to turn on every day is a challenge for me. And so I'm going to be like, I'm not going to let the faucet win today. It's going to be me, or trying to open a bag of chips, and someone tries to open it and they're like, and they throw it down. Well, that's an opportunity, right? Backing into a parking space. All these things are how we train ourselves. And just like anything else, if you train yourself every day in these small places, when you do something like the 4,700 burpees, or I did Kokoro camp with SEAL Fits, a 50-hour Hell Week experience. If you train yourself every day in these small things, the big things aren't a big thing anymore. You know how to handle them. So it's show up every day and turn it into, success.
Well, and I think you're touching on something a lot, that's super huge right now in the world, Boomer. It's that, we have stimulus coming in every day, and that stimulus is going to come in whether you like it or not. We can remove ourselves from certain situations because, I don't like being around people who are gossiping about people, or whatever that is, because that doesn't serve me. It's not useful. It's not really who I want to become. But let's face it, we in this world, we're in quarantine. We have a global pandemic. COVID-19 is all around us. We have political issues. We have human rights violations. There's a lot of stuff going on right now in 2020. And I think a lot of the world looks upon us as athletes that are able to cope and do things like 4,700 burpees in a day, which is incredible. But how did you get through that? And I think it's taking those stimulus that most people would say, okay, I'm tired, I can't do it, I'm hurt, and they quit. And you see that every day at the grocery store. You see that every day at the bank. You see that with people that, grab their bag of potato chips and they can't open it and they freak out completely. So they're looking upon people like you, Boomer, for advice on how to get through the everyday. So let's touch on that a little bit more. So what are some of your, when it comes to, the Unbeatable Mind coach background that you have, that you could see that people going through something like a pandemic, some tools that they could take into their everyday?
Yeah, so great question. I mean, it's one of those things to step back, and whoever thought we'd be here, first of all, no one had ever predicted we'd be here, so no one was ready for it. So the only thing we can do is check in with ourselves. And I would suggest checking in with yourselves in the morning and realizing, what am I excited about today, right? I mean, it's a simple question, but if you're not looking forward, you're stuck in the same kind of feeling you had yesterday. And so that's one of the things you can do, is have a morning ritual, whether that's journaling or meditating or breathing, looking at what does my day look like? What am I going to accomplish today? Maybe accomplishing means staying off Facebook, because that feeds into a negative spin, or off the news, or whatever it happens to be that you feel like might be dragging you down. You have to really look at your life. And so with that, then I would say, at the end of the day, did I do what I wanted to do? A PM ritual. So now you're going to bookend your day. So those are two very simple things you can do. What am I excited to do today? And at the end of the day, what are my wins? And some people say losses, but I don't buy into that, because I'm a reframer. I like to reframe things into a positive. So I say wins and lessons, right? So you take what you won, even if it's small, because that's how you start building momentum, right? Your small wins. Like, you know what? One win today was I told my son I loved him. That was a win. That's great. No matter how small it is, you feel. And then you can build on it every day, right? Your lessons. I took a left down Main Street and there was construction there. My lesson is, I'm not going to do that again. If tomorrow you do the same thing, then you go, guess what? That's my lesson again, until I learn it. And I have to put that lesson into practice. So really have to look and see what you've accomplished. I mean, I know a lot of people are working. We got frontline workers that are getting their butts kicked. We got people that are out there getting back to work. I totally get all of that. But at some point, you do have to look back and say, what really happened in COVID? Did I control my environment? Did I control what I was doing? And especially if you're not a frontline worker, or you have time, like, why not? It's a great time I call it knowledge gaps. Like, you ever wanted to learn something? You ever wanted to get better? You ever want to get deeper? This is the time to do it, right? I told Joe, I got certified in CPR training from home. Like, it's something that I've always wanted to have. I let it go, and I'm like, I need to have this. It's, now's the time to do it. iTunes U. If you've never heard of iTunes U, I stumbled upon this while cleaning up my phone. iTunes U has all these amazing courses. You can go and take like courses from colleges for free. So I'm taking Psychology 101 from Yale for free. So, it's out there. You just have to put some forward process, and little by little, just show up every day. And I think it's not going to make the world better, but it certainly can make you more aware of how you're spending your day, instead of just going down the drain of negativity.
So I think very powerful. And also, I would sort of maybe put some words in your mouth and say, a no excuses life. The excuse is the inability for us to take responsibility for our own decisions and our own actions. I mean, there is no sort of measure of Boomer or Joe or Dave's success. We're all going to live, and we should do that in a principled way. We should do it with values. We should do it with care. But, we often laugh, like, you wouldn't even, if I told you what Dave's time in a 100-mile race was, you'd be like, oh, that's good. But you wouldn't know if that's fast or slow. It might sound it. The refinement isn't the point. The point here is what you're saying, which is we have a lot more control than we realize. And we can frame our living. Yeah, there are some parts of, basic needs that need to be met. But beyond that, I think, the message and what I'd like to ask you is, so when you take on a new student and they come and they have a lot of blockage, for whatever the reason, it could be history, family, or otherwise, how do you help them work through to this sort of the other side, we'll call it, where you'll realize that not only do you not need permission to do anything, you sort of just have to start with 1 step, 1 mile, 1 burpee on the pathway to wherever. We always see the end of the story, right? You as a
Right.
coach, you get to see the beginning of the story. So what are some of your techniques? What have you learned from working with people early on that helps them get that breakthrough?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. And it's not going to surprise you, but breath is the first thing that we start with, teaching people how to breathe, right?
Yeah, that's great.
And I know we've covered that, but that's a huge foundation because it gives someone something to return back to. It's like if you're going to teach someone how to run, maybe the pose running method is how you teach people. I don't know, but the idea, like, always know where your foundation is, because when you're lost, that's where you return back to.
Right.
At least you have that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the very least. But the other thing I like to do, and especially when I get a couple sessions under my belt, is always refer back and give them growth points, right? Because people forget where they came from. And so when you look back and say, remember when you said this? And they're like, oh, you were listening? I'm like, yes, I'm listening. That's what I do. I'm a listener. And so
your rain is coming in,
yeah.
huh?
We do not want rain on your laptop here. That's for sure.
No. Sorry, guys.
No, not at all.
Let me pause for 1 moment. I was
on
such
problem.
a good roll.
Oh, yeah, you were doing great there. But yeah, no, we don't want your laptop getting wet.
Oh, no, you're fine. It just was one point was hitting me. Where do you want me to start, Joe? From the top? I can do that if that's easier.
Yeah, why don't we do that? And we'll just, we'll cut this part out.
Sure. Yeah. So Joe, that's a great question. I'm not going to surprise anybody by saying I always go back to the breathing. That is always the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to give people foundation because, if you're going to teach someone how to run and you teach them the proper technique, you always want them to go back to the technique that they've drilled and that they've put into their life. Now they have awareness about it. So if they have awareness, then they can always go back and say, you know what, I ran into this situation and I breathed. And guess what? It got me through it. Like, that's great. You want to remember that. Let's talk about it a little more. Let's deepen that understanding. Because if they understand how it can help them, then moving forward, they're going to turn to it. But also another thing I like to do is a growth point. And you guys probably can do this if you're coaching athletes running. I mean, you have tangible evidence of this is your time and this is your time. This is how you feel. So it's a great way to say, you have gone from A to B in your time, showing them growth point, right? Well, Unbeatable Mind, we actually have to have them have some self-realization, and come back to them and say, remember when you first started, you said you were XYZ, and now look at you, and now you're here. And they're like, wow, I didn't even know I said that. I can't believe, are you sure I said that? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you said that. I wrote it down, and and we're now setting goals past that. So it's really important, I think, for people to see where they came from, where they're going, and now we can even look further to where they're going to go. So those are just some ways from the very start, the beginning, and it doesn't take much. Once you draw awareness to, maybe something they've learned in the past that you need to get them to reframe. Maybe it's how they speak, right? Sometimes they're very negative and they don't realize it. Sometimes people just have bad patterns. One thing we have people do is write down some lifestyle habits, and they send us a journal every day. And right away you can say, wow, you were really stressed out that day. Let me look back. Oh yeah, you slept terribly. Why'd you sleep terribly? Oh, you had a couple of drinks before you slept. And now we see these patterns. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing in every part of your life. There's patterns that we all kind of have, and until someone tells them that we have them, maybe we still just continue to do them. One of the great lines, I'll close with this, is, if you're in the jar, you can't read the label. So sometimes you need somebody else to read that label to you.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, it speaks to all of our blind spots. Yeah, absolutely. When you're inside that jar, you can't read the label. I love that. That's excellent.
Yeah. Well, I think, the other part, Boomer, so you also, your coach, you coach yourself in a way, but you've also hung out through your camera work and your directing work with some really amazing people, what we would call the amazing. But I bet you that being able to compare some of the, your students that you're coaching with some of these athletes, there's some connection that you can make. What is, like, you can take out of what you see in them, right? Like, what's special about, why did they achieve so much? Because we all know that this ordinary to extraordinary is really the path we all take, and it's the choices we make and how we choose to live that really makes a difference. Any insights you get from, being around the big players when they're doing something big that you can help us with?
Well, something that resonated with me when you said that is, I get to, like, if we compared, a client to a professional athlete, for example, they'd be like, oh, I don't measure up. But we start comparing them to them. It's
Yes.
really interesting, right?
Yep.
So, but back to your question about being with athletes, just seeing, it's just like, it's like being in another world when you hang out with professional athletes. It really is. They're different sized people. They're just are massive, and they're, everything around them is big, and their work ethic, is incredible. It's just, you anything that I can see the athletes doing, I extrapolate and I pull down, and how can I make this into digestible, non-professional athlete use, right? And a lot of it just has to do with work ethic. And it's a great example too, which I've never done with my client, but who are some of the athletes you look up to? And it'd be cool to see how I can pull, traits from the people they really have admired or grew up watching, and actually, use that as a communication line. That's actually an interesting point. Not sure if I answered your question. I kind of danced around there a little bit, but.
And Boomer, not to interrupt you there, but maybe to add to your point about what makes extraordinary athletes do those extraordinary things, that we all look upon those extraordinary athletes and think, oh, I wish I could one day do something. The very first question I asked you during this interview was, really about the 4,700 burpees in the day. And the very first thing that you brought up was that you spent weeks, I think you said weeks, reframing, the idea of, I love burpees. I want to do these burpees. These burpees mean this to me, and I want to. So it almost seemed as though you went into the day that you did the 4,700 burpees, just eager to drop down and do your first, and then do your 100th, and then do your 1,000th. And so would you have to say that, okay, maybe one of the things that makes you on the razor's edge of doing what we do, our craft, through athletics or through sport or whatever it is maybe one thing that might make you a little bit different? Because most people would go, oh, I hate burpees. I can't stand burpees. And so of course we categorically move away from the things that we don't want to do. It's like public speaking. Most people don't like public speaking. So they'll say, public speaking is this, 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 and this, and they're all negative things. Well, of course you're not going to lean into it, because you've already decided for yourself that you hate this. Would you have to say that the way that you framed that day that you did the 4,700 burpees, maybe that's one of the major reasons why you were leaning into it all day?
Yeah. Oh, there was no doubt about it. If I had this self-limiting belief that I couldn't do it, that I'm not worthy, that I've never seen anybody else ever do this before, whatever happened to be, whatever story I'm telling myself, if I was telling myself the wrong story, then it was going to be a very short day. But it's interesting that you had said about public speaking. So probably 2006, maybe, I was doing a Google search, and something popped up on my, on my Google search, and it said improv class. And all of a sudden my palms got really sweaty. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what I need. And I love comedy. I think comedy's amazing. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And so next thing you know, I was signed up and I'm doing improv classes, and it was stuff that just gave me the sweats and made me nervous. And I loved it. And I think that's one of the most important things in my life that I have done. So now as a coach, I present, I speak, I do all that stuff. And you know what? I know my material, but if you perform improv every time you go on stage, you have no idea what anything is. And that's nerve-wracking. And so that's a great growth point that I leaned into, and because I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to, and I loved it, loved the experience. I loved the growth points as we talked about. And I hope I made some people laugh. I mean, that was really what I wanted to go and entertain. And yeah, I hope so.
I think, you know, that's the old saying, which is comfortable being uncomfortable. It's a place to go, because then it sort of doesn't matter. You know, when I set out to do the 6 marathons in 6 days on 6 continents, you know, I had 2 groups of people. Everyone would say to me all the stuff that could go wrong and that I shouldn't do it. And then the people were like, oh, wow, that's amazing. You know, I wish I would do that. And, you know, when you go into it, I would get telling people, you know, why don't I just go find out instead of, you know, deciding it can't work before I go, right? Like that the success is only really actually by going to do it. I don't have control over whether the planes were going to take off or traffic would be bad or I would turn my ankle one way or the other. But I said, I'll just go find out. And then they would look at me like, oh, okay. You know, the ones with all of the reasons why it won't work. And there is something to be said for that as the theme, which I think is what you're talking about here, which is let's go find out. You know, let's be, you know, when we interviewed Rhea last week, we sort of came up with this idea that the overlap between courage and curiosity creates a great life. You know, the more that you can overlap those two. And I think that that's something that you've done, and you probably can see it in some of your students, right? They want to know, and then they have the guts, and then lots of things happen.
Yeah, and you know, we talk about being playful and being like making people laugh. Like, why not be a kid again and be curious? Like, you know, you don't have to know all the answers. I'm so sick of everyone saying, I know. Like, how many times have you talked to someone and they go, I know? That's the easiest way to shut down a conversation. Like, that means they don't want to talk about it anymore. They probably don't know, but they just don't want to talk about it anymore. So I love people that say, you know what? I don't know, and I'm curious. Let's have a conversation. And that probably goes with COVID, with racial issues. It goes with even political. Not going to get political. I'm not political. But if people were curious and had conversations with being courageous, then I think a lot of these things, a lot of these fears, a lot of things the ambiguous things that people think they know, but they don't really know. I think a lot of that we could close the gap on a lot of that in our all of our society.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Being open for growth, right? And that's just right. It. I ended up this past weekend, I ended up putting on a running race. There was a global running race called the Quarantine Backyard Ultra. And it was fantastic. And there was, you know, just what you were saying there was reminding me of this one runner who was running, and he absolutely terrified me because he was running around downtown New Delhi in barefoot, and he had a little moped following him, and the noise and you were thinking this guy's going to get run over. But he would get done every loop, and I think he ended up running like 40 or 42 hours straight. And he would say, okay, I'm done. And then his crew would jump in, they would walk on his back and things. And he would stand up and he would say, oh, I'm just going to try my best. And he would get out and do another one. And it was just so fantastic to be able to, you know, I understood in that moment that he was available for growth. Yeah. He was like, I don't know everything, but I know that I can start this next lap and we'll see what happens. And so I can almost guarantee you a guy like him would never say, I know, because he knows what he doesn't know, and then he's willing to grow and learn. And I think that's super cool. And I'm sure that you see that, Boomer, as well too, with all your athletes coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to take in this workout and I'm going to understand that I don't know, but I'm willing to know more if you could teach me.
Yeah, and a lot of it is, like you said, reframing. Every time I hear this word try, I'm doing my best. I'm not trying. I'm doing my best to eliminate that from my vocabulary. And I do the same with my clients. There's no more trying. We're just doing, we're being, we're becoming, right? It's action. We're not trying is something that slows us down, that weighs us down. So a lot of the people they want to become something. So let's start. It's a great line. It's not fake it till you make it. It's be it till you become it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that you have to emulate what you want to become to eventually get there. And that's really what I get my clients to start thinking, like, this is what I want to be. All right, well, this is what we're going to be. Let's be it until we become it.
Mhm.
I like that. And Dave, for what it's worth, it might be like 5 or 6 years ago, I was in Delhi and I was running in the middle of the summer. And, it's rather homogeneous culture. So there aren't a lot of Caucasians out in the middle of the day running, and they're looking at you like you're a little bit of a kook. But at 110 degrees like it was, the idea that we were going to do 40 of those around in the dusty environment, I stopped at a gas station to buy, I think it was like some water and a Coke to survive. I was just doing 10 miles that day. So I can relate with how hard that probably was for him. But their context, it also frames their expectations, which is another part of it. We live an awfully privileged life. It's very much full of comfort. One of the things I think, Boomer, you could tell us a little bit about as it relates to the other side of your experience on the SEALFIT side is it's a bit more about discomfort. It's not even permanent. It's only temporary, but it does test us a lot because we've been too comfortable, or why, Boomer? Why is discomfort so hard and stops so many of us?
That's a good question. I think we have become comfortable. I mean, we have turned to cage fighting as entertainment. I think we've become too comfortable. But no, I think we want to be challenged. We want to push. We want to get out of our comfort zone. Like you said, that's your growth point. I have a saying. I know Natalie dropped her saying, so I'll drop my saying here. And maybe somebody else came up with it. I think I might have dreamt about it. But it's called reference of tolerance. And it's a great way to look at how long you've done something. How cold is the water? How much in a relationship will you stand, right? Sometimes our tolerance level is so low when you get out of a relationship. So it's a great way to kind of look at ambiguous things, because it's easy to say a goal or a PR. It's written down. That's my PR. That's my time. That's my weight. But when you have this reference of tolerance, it really is almost a mindset of how much you can stand and how much you can go out and push it. Right. So my reference of tolerance is 4,700 burpees. Like, I know if I have to do I have to do 100 burpees today. So that's easy, Yeah. So once you've pushed yourself so much, the scale of other things makes it so much easier. So make life hard so the every day is easy. And that goes right back to our mental toughness, right? Do hard stuff so every day is easier. That's exactly, the whole cycle that we like to promote.
And I think you're absolutely right. It seems impossible until somebody does it. It's just very well like the 2-hour marathon.
Exactly.
I almost guarantee you that, when it does happen, although someone argued that it did happen, but it was on a manufactured course. But when it does happen, it's going to happen often and by many, and it's going to be pretty great. But the human mind, almost just our collective minds, need that to occur for us to take that next step. And so maybe that that being said, watching guys like you, Boomer, watching the outliers amongst the community and the people that are really, pushing the envelope and living on that razor's edge, maybe you're doing, the greater good to the average person, because they think, well, okay, if a guy like Boomer can make the attempt, I can make the attempt. I can, and sometimes just getting out of bed, getting out to do one more loop with our race on the weekend. And so, is this something within your coaching that you push your athletes and say, okay, one little step will turn into 2 and turn into 4? Is that something that you push with your athletes?
Yeah. So a lot of the people that I coach aren't even athletes. So just to make a little kind of clarity, I guess. So SEALFIT is the working out, and Unbeatable Mind is the working in. So when you combine them, they're amazing. So a lot of the people that I coach are not necessarily competitive athletes. They are athletic. There is a physical aspect to them. But a lot of the people we're teaching about emotional resilience, how to share their emotions, how to tap into their intuition, how to make lifelong decisions of business. And so we push in different ways. Like, how do you have a crucial conversation with a loved one? Like we deal with that, because a lot of times the elephant in the room It doesn't go away unless you address it. And when it's addressed, both sides are like, wow, that's something we both needed to talk to. I'm so glad we did, because we can now move on, or we can now move apart, depending on what the outcome is. But, you know, teammates, you know, people you work with, there's crucial conversations that have to happen. And there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in that. So that's just one of the pieces that we work on, you know, and get deeper into, you know, we work with 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and kokoro, which is warrior spirit. And we really want to see peaks and not really valleys, but we want to see nice peaks when we do an assessment of everyone being a whole body and mind individual. So, you know, so when we talk about pushing our athletes, we're really pushing them in a lot of different domains, as well as what they want to achieve. You know, some people, one of my clients I saw wanted to lose X amount of weight. He didn't lose the weight, but he got stronger, more flexible, and injury free. And he lost some weight. So look at all the other pluses that came along with that. And that's kind of what then you're like, you champion that, right? As a coach, you're like, those are huge wins. Let's worry about the weight that's going to happen, but let's continue with this other thing that's giving you all this flexibility and strength. And then you say, well, where else in your practice can you have flexibility and strength, right? Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So let's create that and see where else that shows up in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of fascinating because, you know, so much of what you talk about is that it's really just about us versus us often. You know, the coach helps guide us to a place of, whether we're in the jar and can't read the label, or we have some level of insecurity for whatever the reason, the context, the history, you know, the feedback that we've taken from others. And I sort of like to think that one of the growth paths for all of us is to just believe more in ourselves, that the person who should judge us are really us, not other people who actually have no right. You know, some math teacher in 4th grade said, "Boomer, you're not any good at math." Well, did they really know? Or did you just believe it because some dope said it? You know, like where we should take feedback. I mean, and we can do it objectively ourselves, you know, just write it down. You know, it isn't like I'm going to make it up if I did the burpee or I didn't, or if I didn't read a book or I did, you know. And so I think that part of what we're on this journey to find is this willingness of each of us to sort of take care of ourselves well enough with whatever resources we might need, because it's always good to have people helping. Do you feel like we're making progress there? I mean, forget as a society, I think we're slipping. You know, with the right techniques and the right process, we can sort of hand off what Boomer understands to others so they can own it and feel better about it.
Yeah, you know, when I started this year, I had 3 clients. I currently have 19. So people want this. They want to talk about it. They want, you know, mental health is a huge issue, and people want control as they get older, right? They want to know how to breathe. There's, you know, the tons of podcasts that are out there now, you know, the information, people want information. So I think there's a nice push towards health, towards outliers. And we see it with Spartan races and Tough Mudders and, you know, CrossFit and wherever that is. But the idea that, you know, people are getting outside and they're making an effort to make it part of their lives. And we see our communities growing. I see my community growing very fast. I don't know how you guys are seeing on your end.
Oh yeah, our, you know, the ultramarathon community that I'm involved in here in Canada is growing exponentially, and I think it's you know, people at a time of crisis turn inward, you know, where they should, at least they turn inward and they wonder, okay, how can I, you know, best exist in this space and sharpen my knives and improve myself. And so then they try to do difficult things or whatever they deem as being difficult, and take those opportunities. And once you become good at those, you tend to bring those into other parts of your life when it comes to relationships or work or whatever that is. And so, yeah, no, I'm seeing, you know, when it comes to those activities where people have deemed to be difficult, those things are growing. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're, if we go back in history a little bit, you know, when we were farmers and lived off the land, we lived a rather adventurous life. It wasn't simple, it was hard. There's a lot in us to survive that. And I think that because of comfort, we've had to introduce into our lives some kind of adventure, whether it's an amusement park and going on a roller coaster. They always made a joke of this: is you don't find coal miners, doing adventure sports.
Right.
They have a lot of adventure in their day.
Right.
So I think that the human system needs this balance. We're built to use it, and when we don't use it, it becomes sort of an internal enemy. I think it makes us negative. And so when you free that part of us, this is beyond the intellectual. This is how I could make it in a Lewis and Clark expedition, because that's going to be rough and tumble. When we start to use that, we become better people and the rest of us flourish. But we bottle it, I think it becomes really problematic. That's why I do think Spartan, Tough Mudder, ultra marathoning, SEAL Fit are attracting people because it's not being used and it's sitting waiting to be used. I don't know, Boomer, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think that's a great point. And I think as people are getting older and still staying active, I think people want challenges and they don't want to leave things on the table. And so when they see what other people get out of it, like what you guys are doing and what you get out of it, I mean, look how many people did the 7 continents marathon. And it's just like, they see people doing it and they're like, I want some of that. Let me figure out how to get some of that. That's right. And I think it's part of it is just like, whether it's the 4,700 burpees, maybe no one wants part of that, but whatever, the ultra marathon, it's crazy to me. Now, ultra marathon used to be what, 50 miles originally?
Yeah, when it started, roughly, yeah. Anything over a marathon. Yeah, but it was typically 50 miles, yeah.
And now it's like 50 miles. I do that in my sleep. It's crazy. So, you can see, it's just like we talked about, the sub 2 hour marathon. Like once you start letting your mind go, you're like, all right, let's see how far we can stretch this thing. My last birthday, not this 49th birthday, but last year, I did a running deal, which was running 2 miles every hour for 24 hours. So that was my challenge, to answer the bell, kind of last man standing type thing, but it was only 2 miles. That was so hard. I'd never run more than a half marathon before. So to run 48 miles in a day, answering that bell every hour, I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine doing 4 miles every hour or whatever it normally is. So I have so much respect for, people who take things and just blow it up. And, Dave, what you do, I can't even imagine. It's one of those things, until you get into that world, it doesn't even seem real.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Boomer, for saying that. What I really respect about what you're doing, Boomer, is that you're igniting. You found a fire from within, and you found a means to go and get it. And what I love about what you're doing is you're igniting that into a community of other people who are struggling with finding that path, and that path that you've also created for yourself. You could see, supporting people in those other ways. So what we do with the Chasing Tomorrow podcast is we end up our podcast typically by asking our guest, and you, Boomer, what are you doing to chase tomorrow? And I'm pretty sure I already know the answer when it comes to igniting others, but maybe expand on that a little bit. What are you doing tomorrow and next year and this next decade to really improve yourself and your community?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay a little more general, but talk about my purpose. So my purpose is to inspire and encourage others through self-mastery. And so I really feel chasing tomorrow means just making myself better. And if I'm inspiring others, that means I'm really doing that, outwardly, encouraging others, right? Showing courage, allowing others to dream, come along with me. I'm not inclusive. I'm not exclusive. I'm inclusive. I want to bring people with me. And I always have a saying that I write in the bottom of my emails: learn, share, and grow. And I really feel that's true. If you learn, go to the village, share it, and then together you grow. And I really feel that's my chasing tomorrow, is learn, share, and grow.
Well, Boomer, it's been great having you on. We appreciate your time, and we love your commitment to others. Hopefully what everyone got a little bit out of this is, almost a bit of a free coaching session from you. And we're going to check in with you when you craft your next big adventure and see how you're doing, and we'll go chase tomorrow together. So thanks very much.
Ellis, thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and look forward to catching up with you again.
All right, take care.
Take care, Boomer.